My name is Maria Perez Gomez. I am the author of The Magical Closet Mystery. And what inspired me to write The Magical Closet Mystery initially was that we were producing one-act, 10-minute musicals with Raíces Theater Company. I've always loved working with children, and so I was inspired to write something for children. Now, in terms of the theme of The Magical Closet, at a very young age, I lost my baby brother, Oscar Roberto. And every time I would think about him, if I was sad, I would hide in a closet. So fast forward many years later, that happened when I was 11. And in my 50s, I had the opportunity to write a book where I could then focus on the closet being a magical place and only good things happening. The book centers on grief, identity, and family. And the reason that I chose to focus on grief was because I lost my baby brother when I was 11. I lost my father when I was 39. And the impact that these tragic losses had on my life led me to want to share with other people how to process it. And it ended up being through a book and doing it in a way, focusing on children, first of all, but doing it in a way that felt accessible, that felt like an adventure while you were processing difficult emotions. And within that adventure, I included the Puerto Rican culture, which is super important to me. And I dedicated the book to my father, Pilar Perez, who was a lover of Puerto Rico. He wrote this line that says, Puerto Rico, tierra grata, que con pena te dejé. Puerto Rico, enchanted island, with sorrow I left you. I wanted to honor him, honor everything my grandfather Jorge, my grandmother Elena, my mom Nivian had taught me about the richness of our culture. And obviously in mentioning their names, you understand the value of family for me. It's always about family and how can we honor that rich tradition of family that has been passed down to us through our abuelos. Luca's longing for Puerto Rico is very powerful in that it is something that I can relate to. There's always a part of us in everything that we write. There's always truth to it, right? It stems and is inspired by our own experiences. And just recently went to Puerto Rico a couple times within the last year. One of them was to tour to speak about my book. And then the second time was just, was for fun to celebrate my 30th anniversary. Every time I left, it was difficult because it honestly felt like there was a sorrow that it involved. There was a grief that it involved. Not knowing when I was going to return, leaving always felt difficult. And so, and in that way, I feel like Luca, there are a few things, right? There's a loss that he has experienced. And if you want to know more, you got to read the book. But there's a loss that he has experienced. And all he had known up until that loss was the island, was Puerto Rico. And if you know, you know. The beauty and the magic of the island is something that you never outgrow. It's something that never leaves you. I hope that the message that young readers take away from this story, one of them is be kind. Everybody's going through something. Somebody has experienced loss in some way. So I hope that children and just people in general, adults too, that we learn to be kind to people that are going through difficult situations. I hope that children and adults alike, humanity in general, can honor our rich differences and discover that it is so much more that unites us than separates us. So I long to see and experience that moment where it all comes together, the kindness and the celebration of human kindness. Centering on Puerto Rican culture was extremely important to me in this story. I identify as a Latina Puerto Rican woman, and I'm really proud of my heritage, and sharing that with other people is really important to me. It's important to me to highlight everything that has to do with Puerto Rican culture. It's important that I celebrate every aspect of it, and it's important that I make it known. I am very proud, like I said before, and it's not something that I ever want to hide. I think it's important to address grief in children's book because I don't think it's something that's talked about enough. As somebody who's experienced loss, I remember hiding in a closet to process loss, not having an adult, my parents didn't have the tools to help me process that loss. It wasn't something that you talked about in school either. So rather than processing it, I hid. In my adult years, it then becomes, I had the opportunity to have the outlet through creativity, through the arts, but it wasn't something that was accessible. And there's a certain shame as well that surrounds grief. There's a certain shame that surrounds speaking about vulnerable emotions. And I'm hoping with this book to mitigate some of that and to create safe spaces where children can talk about sadness and realize that it's a normal human emotion that we have to process. And there's no reason that anybody should go through that sadness alone. I hope that people understand the array of opportunity, of purpose that comes from pain. Pain doesn't exist for the sake of pain being an isolated event. If you take pain and you add purpose, it will always, always equal greatness. And I hope that people can get that from it. Understand that your pain with purpose will change people's lives. Luca couldn't stop himself. He didn't want to stop himself. All the notes returned fresh from a well of love in his memory. Then, just as the rivers pour into the ocean, Luca poured out all the feelings he'd been bottling up for so long. I really miss you, Papi. Anytime I was discouraged, you played your cuatro and sang the Little Lie song until I fell asleep. Lelo, 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 lie. Luca continued to sing, repeating the chorus over and over again, moving closer to hope with each note.